it is true. The trade is still scandalously stupid, but it becomes a scandal of an entirely different level if it is.
It really don't make a difference if you say he.
Big news breaking across the WNBA world right now. A fresh controversy is blowing up after Matt Walsh dropped some serious claims connected to Britney Griner and the league itself. Fans are buzzing, and everyone wants answers. What exactly was kept quiet? And why is Sophie Cunningham's old comment suddenly back in the spotlight? Stick around, because we're going to cut through the noise, separate rumor from reality, and give you the full picture. Let's get right into it. Right now, some of the biggest voices in sports media are calling out what they see as double standards inside the WNBA, live, on air, for everyone to hear. And behind the scenes, league officials are reportedly scrambling, because this whole situation is putting the WNBA at a real turning point.
It's got a lot of people asking the same question. Is that really a she? Now that I think about it, it kind of makes sense that when she was in Russia, that they decided to put her in a men.
The mainstream media's early push to force a political angle onto this story has completely blown up in their faces, and now it's got people arguing everywhere, from big-name podcasts all the way to primetime news shows.
Over transgender athlete, she's a WNBA star, slamming the push to ban biological men from competing against biological women.
So when someone like Britney Griner says, actually, I'm going to fight for men to play in women's sports, it's just another blow against lots of young...
Matt Walsh, the host of the show, came out swinging at the sports world, saying these organizations have twisted themselves into such a strange position that they can't even give a straight answer to something as basic as what a woman is. And Matt didn't hold back. He laid out the hard truths, plain and simple.
One of the things that made him wake up to this issue is that he's an MMA fighter.
Correct.
Biological males who are transitioning to female, beating the hell out of biological females in the ring. He started to think,
What are we doing?
What are we doing here? Like,
that.
why are we cheering this?
I assumed that was the case from the beginning. I assume it because I reflexively disbelieve everything this administration says. Also because a Griner or no one offer from Russia makes it easier on the White House. Russia would actually be doing the White House a favor by saying, we'll give you her or we'll give you nobody. Because it just makes it a simpler choice. But Russia's not interested in making things easier. It puts Biden in a more precarious and politically difficult situation to make him choose which American he wants. And so it just makes logical sense that Russia would prefer to put him in that situation. Especially because they likely knew that he would humiliate himself and his country by extension by choosing the
He pointed straight at the basic science. Women carry XX chromosomes, men carry XY, and warned that letting biological males compete in women's sports tears down the exact protections Title IX was built to guarantee.
WNBA have an onus of responsibility to be able to ensure that it's fair playership, though. I don't know if playership's a word.
For college sports and for the WNBA too, 100%. I mean, I don't think it's ever okay for guys to be playing girl sports, but if this is true, then she was like the origin of this epidemic.
Running that jail in Russia. She was...
Something huge just shook the WNBA world, and honestly, nobody saw it coming this fast. A firestorm has erupted after commentator Matt Walsh threw out some explosive claims tied directly to Britney Griner. And within hours, the entire sports internet was on fire. People are asking the same question everywhere. What exactly is going on? And why is Sophie Cunningham suddenly getting dragged back into the middle of it? Stick with us, because we're about to break down every angle of this story, separate the noise from the truth, and show you why this fight is far from over. Right now, some of the loudest names in sports media are calling out what they say are glaring double standards inside the WNBA. And they're doing it loudly, publicly, and on camera. Behind closed doors, league officials are reportedly panicking because this controversy has pushed the organization into a corner it can't easily talk its way out of. What started as an attempt by mainstream outlets to spin this into a clean political narrative has completely fallen apart. Instead of controlling the story, they lit a fuse. Now the argument has spread everywhere, from massive podcast studios to primetime news broadcasts, with everybody weighing in. Matt Walsh didn't hold back. He came out swinging at the entire sports establishment, saying these organizations have backed themselves into such an absurd corner that they can no longer even give a straight answer to a simple question. What actually defines a woman? He laid it out in blunt terms, pointing straight at basic biology. Women carry XX chromosomes. Men carry XY. That's not opinion, that's genetics. And Walsh warned that letting biological men compete against women tears apart the very protections that Title IX was built to guarantee in the first place. This whole firestorm traces back to a heated exchange where Walsh pressed directly on the WNBA's political climate, pointing out how athletes like Sophie Cunningham, who simply speak up for basic science, are forced to defend themselves against a league narrative that seems to ignore biology altogether. During one exchange, Walsh was asked where he stood on transgender athletes being allowed to compete, and he made it clear this issue sits near the very top of what he plans to keep fighting for. Then things escalated even further when Britney Griner stepped into the conversation herself. Griner spoke publicly about believing that everyone deserves the chance to play, and she made it clear she intends to use her platform to support transgender athletes and push back against anyone trying to stop biological men from competing. In her own words, she brushed off being referred to as he or she, saying it honestly doesn't bother her, recalling moments in restaurants or going through TSA security where she says she never made a big deal out of it, even when others around her seemed uncomfortable. Naturally, those comments didn't sit quietly. Major news outlets jumped on them almost immediately. Author Douglas Murray was one of the most vocal critics, calling the remarks a serious blow to thousands of female athletes across the country. Murray argued that this kind of stance directly undermines young women who are fighting for fair competition, scholarship opportunities, and roster spots they've worked years to earn. He pointed out something interesting too, that Griner was fortunate her career started under a different set of rules, because if today's debates had existed back then, her own path might have looked completely different. Murray also noted a troubling pattern in America, a real lack of women publicly standing up for other women on this exact issue, something he says isn't nearly as common in countries like his native Britain, where prominent women across sports and politics have pushed back much harder on similar debates. Murray also brought up something Walsh has said before, that years ago, after watching biological men physically dominate women in combat sports, even Walsh understood just how serious this issue could become. While activist groups praised Griner's comments, plenty of female athletes fired right back. Tennis legend Martina Navratilova and two-time Olympian Sharon Davies were among the most outspoken critics, pointing to data suggesting nearly 14,000 female athletes have lost opportunities or finished lower in competition because of unfair physical matchups. Navratilova's message was simple: protect the boundaries that keep women's sports fair, and stop trying to redefine what fairness even means. But despite all that pushback from fans and respected athletes alike, league executives and outspoken activists kept pushing forward with the same divisive messaging, a move that's alienating a huge chunk of the fan base. And that's where Sophie Cunningham comes back into focus. A woman stood up to defend women's spaces in sports, and instead of support, she got attacked, including by other women, simply because she doesn't support biological men competing in women's categories. Cunningham, who plays guard for the Indiana Fever, found herself at the center of a massive backlash after an ESPN feature captured her clearly stating that she opposes men competing against women in sports. Her reasoning was simple. She wants to protect young girls, both on the court and off it, in locker rooms and everywhere else. She called her stance basic common sense, rooted in reality, not politics. This clash between corporate messaging and plain common sense has put WNBA leadership in an incredibly tough spot. On one side, you've got players like Cunningham risking public criticism just to protect what she sees as fairness in women's sports. On the other, you've got voices like Griner continuing to push narratives that are sparking outrage across the fan base. The divide inside the league has never looked more obvious. Some players standing firmly behind biological reality, others hiding behind carefully worded corporate statements. Then, just as the media story started spinning out of control, old footage and resurfaced claims about Griner's background suddenly resurfaced online, reignited by viral investigations and old clips being shared everywhere. This new wave of attention created an even bigger headache for league officials, who appear to be trying to quietly downplay the entire situation. One trans commentator responded publicly, saying that a jersey which once represented someone she respected as an athlete now represents something she can no longer support, arguing that using a platform to marginalize a vulnerable community crosses a line for her personally. Despite the intense backlash coming at her from multiple directions, Cunningham never backed down, and a lot of fans are loving her for it. As public scrutiny hit an all-time high, several major commentary shows dove even deeper, digging through old clips, resurfaced footage, and years of online rumors, all while pointing out how conveniently silent major sports networks have been about Griner's time detained in Russia. Analysts covering this story have repeatedly hammered on one central argument. While private organizations are free to promote whatever message they choose, taxpayer-funded sports and school programs need to stick strictly to biological fairness. These same commentators have pointed to obvious physical advantages, lung capacity, bone density, raw muscle strength, as reasons why biological limitations in sports categories shouldn't be treated as negotiable. And this entire circus helps explain something deeper: why the WNBA has struggled financially and fought so hard for mainstream attention in the first place. As one commentator put it, this isn't going away because the league has genuine cultural power now thanks to players like Caitlin Clark, yet keeps stumbling into controversy instead of capitalizing on it. Fans who would have never cared about women's basketball before are now buying tickets just to see Clark and Cunningham play. Cunningham has even earned a nickname online for refusing to back down from her position, and instead of scaring fans away, it's pulling more of them into arenas. Clark, meanwhile, is being compared to legends of the sport. She's smashing viewership records, packing stadiums nationwide, and giving women's basketball a level of commercial attention it's never had before. Fans have paid serious money, in some cases over $1,000, just to watch her and Cunningham share the court. Before she entered the league, women's basketball simply didn't have this kind of spotlight. Millions of fans now tune in purely for her skill, her range, and her love of the game, proving that people want elite competition, not forced political drama. Yet instead of fully embracing that momentum, league leadership keeps letting cultural arguments overshadow the game itself. Even Joe Rogan weighed in on his own show, warning that by prioritizing controversial politics over Clark's massive, genuine fan base, the league risks wasting one of the biggest opportunities it's ever had. At the center of it all stand two very different groups. Athletes like Cunningham, representing the majority of fans who simply want fair competition and real athletic excellence, and voices pushing to erase biological boundaries entirely, who seem to be drifting further from everyday fans who just want the games to stay fair. So where does this all leave us? What began as just another WNBA debate has turned into a much bigger national conversation about fairness, about the future of women's sports, about media coverage, and about how far professional leagues should go when controversy takes over the headlines. Big names like Matt Walsh, Joe Rogan, Sophie Cunningham, Britney Griner, and Martina Navratilova have all become part of this story, and it clearly isn't slowing down anytime soon. The bigger question still remains unanswered. Should leagues focus purely on competition and fairness, letting the athletes stay at the center of attention? Or should professional sports take an active role in broader social debates? There's no denying women's basketball has hit a defining moment, with stars like Clark pulling in massive new audiences and putting more pressure than ever on league leadership to make the right call. These conversations around gender, fairness, and inclusion in sports are genuinely complicated, and different people bring different experiences and opinions to the table. Opinions that deserve honest discussion, not empty slogans. So now it's your turn. What's your take on everything laid out today? Do you agree with the criticism aimed at the WNBA? How much weight should biological differences carry in women's sports? And where do you personally land between the positions taken by Cunningham and Griner? Drop your thoughts in the comments. You don't have to agree with everyone to be part of the conversation, just keep it respectful. If this video kept you hooked, do us a favor, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next big story as this saga keeps unfolding. Share this with any basketball fan who needs to see this, because this conversation is far from finished, and neither are we. Stay tuned, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.